Natalie Bennett, good morning.
Good morning.
We know you have lots of green policies, the clue's in the name, but you also have lots of other important policies, and that's what I want to look at this morning. Now, one of your flagship policies is for the state to give every adult a basic weekly income of at least £72, so-called citizens' income, whether they need it or not, at a cost of up to £280 billion. How would you pay for that?
Well, first of all, it's worth saying that's a gross cost. So about half of the cost of that would come from replacing existing benefits and, of course, reducing administration costs.
Give me an example of what a benefit would replace.
Job seekers allowance.
Well, how much does that save?
That's what the total figure comes together. But
hold on, the job seekers allowance only costs $3 billion.
Yeah.
So you're a long way off 280.
But it costs a massive amount to administer.
Even so.
And that's one of the factors about universal basic income is that the cost of administration is extremely low.
Where else would you pay for it?
If you look at in terms of universal child benefit, the cost of administration is about 1% of the total cost of the benefit, and that's something that we need to do. And all of the details of this will be spelled out.
But give us an example of. You've got 280 billion. So far, you've only given me 3 billion. I'll give you another 5 billion for administrative costs. I'm still looking for another 272 billion.
Well, all of this will be fully spelt out in our fully costed manifesto released in March that will set out exactly how we're going to make all of this add up. But what we're looking at in terms of, and in broader prospect of this, is we need to rebalance our economy so multinational companies and rich individuals pay their way. So in terms of where some more of the money's coming from is we have to make multinational companies stop being parasites on our society and pay their taxes.
All right, but
we've announced also that, a wealth tax, which...
and we'll come on to the wealth tax too, but let's take corporation tax. Receipts, companies paying taxes. At the moment, they pay 42 billion a year. Now, even if you doubled that to 84 billion, which I think would probably be mission impossible, even if you doubled corporation tax, you're nowhere near 280 billion.
And what we're saying is, under this government, corporation tax has gone down. The take has gone down 14%. Right. We have companies like Amazon, the website company, that last year paid 0.01% of its turnover in tax.
But even if they paid all their tax that they should, and I'm not arguing about that, you're nowhere near 280 billion.
Well, I will invite everybody to go over our fully costed manifesto when it's released in March, which will be the fine-tooth comb with all of these things. And I think it's really worth thinking about where we are now and where we could be with a universal basic income. And where we could be is a situation where nobody's living in fear. So many people now, we saw Shelter just after Christmas saying 11% of people fear that they won't be able to pay their rent or their mortgage in January. We're seeing people with absolutely unfair, very swinging cuts to benefits. We're seeing all of those things.
I understand the case for it. I'm not arguing with the case for it. I'm arguing how you're going to pay for it. Now, it's not entirely uncosted because, according to your party policy statement, the citizens' income, quote, will replace personal tax-free allowances. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
But at the moment, people can earn up to £10,500 a year before they start paying tax. Your citizens' income is only just over £3,500 a year.
And what that means is that what we're doing is taking away the benefit traps. So if, for
example... But poor people, low-income earners, they would lose that £10,500 tax-free?
But they're getting the citizens' income. No one on a low income will be worse off. I can say that very clearly and categorically. And what it also does is it removes the benefit traps. At the moment, we've seen Ian Duncan Smith trying to introduce an immensely complex computer system that no one thinks will work. What this does, it removes the benefit traps. If you're living simply on the citizen's income because you're a carer or you're unemployed, someone offers you a few days' work. You can take that without any fear of risk of losing benefits, without any fear of being worse off. You will not be worse off.
It does mean that low-income earners will start paying tax a lot earlier so that you get the money to give people who don't need it £72 a week. Where is the justice in that?
At the other income level, as soon as you're earning decent amounts of money, this will be recovered back from the tax system. The beauty of this, the way universal basic income really works, is that it's very simple, very low cost to administer, and it means that anyone who wants to, is not working full time but wants to take a bit of work can take that on. That's the benefit, and everyone who is poorer will be better off.
But you also want the citizens' income to make full-time paid work less necessary. That's a quote, again, from your policy statement. So if more of us are doing unpaid work, we won't be paying tax. So you're going to reduce the tax base in the country?
Well, what we're looking at is a situation that means that if you, say, want to start a small business, at the moment that's a really big risk. Lots of people think, you have a bad month in your business, you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your rent. This actually gives you a kind of security, a base from which you can choose to start a small business, from which you can actually choose to build your life. And I think what you might find is some of the really nasty jobs in our society, it might be hard to fulfil, and maybe we'll have to pay sewer cleaners more than bankers.
But if more of us, but you want people to do unpaid work. You want more people to be the full-time work to be less necessary. If you do that, by definition, fewer of us will be paying tax.
And what we want is people to have a choice of how they live their life, to be able to build the kind of life they want. And I think, with universal basic income, I think you'd see that some of those really nasty jobs that many of us encounter, at least at the other end of call centres, where callers have to answer the call in 54 seconds, and then they're timed when they go to the loo. Those kind of jobs would be pretty hard to fulfil, and it would be quite good for people calling them as well as.
I'm not arguing about that. Again, my point is that you erode the tax base, but in another way, you want to increase the tax base because you want a wealth tax of 1 or 2% on everybody with a total wealth of over £3 million. How much would that raise?
It would raise between a quarter and a half of the cost of the NHS.
But so between what, 30 to 45 billion?
In that sort of range.
Okay.
And what you're looking at there is a situation where we have a huge problem with inequality in our society. We've been talking about this in Davos.
I understand.
Even the IMF and the World Bank are saying this is a huge problem.
I understand the case for the wealth tax, but I want to interrogate you why you think it will get anything near 45 billion. France still has a wealth tax. Sweden had a wealth tax for 70 years. How much did either of these wealth taxes raise?
What the wealth tax in Britain, the proposal we've got, there's a paper on the Green Party website. Anyone's welcome to look at that.
But how much did the French and the Swedish ones raise?
I don't know the exact
figures.
Well,
I'll tell you. The Swedish one, when it was abolished in 2007, raised £450 million a year. And the Swedish one clicked in at a lot less than £3 million. The French one, which still exists, raises under 4 billion euros a year, and it clicks in at £800,000, a lot less than 3 million. So I ask you, how can you hope to raise 45 billion when tried and tested wealth taxes raise peanuts compared to that?
Well, there are obviously different countries, different systems, different ways of doing things. People are very welcome to have a look at the Green Party website and see how the figures are worked out.
But I have looked at that.
If you look at the situation, Thomas Piketty, the economics book of the year last year, was talking about how this is something we need to do. We have to deal with the problem of inequality. We cannot allow the 1%.
I'm trying to get you to tell me in what possible way could it raise 45 billion when all the evidence is it's nowhere near there.
Well, you're making comparison to other countries with different tax systems.
The wealth tax of 1.5% in France, which clicks in above 800,000 euros, is actually a tougher wealth tax than the one you're proposing, which doesn't click in at 1.5% to 3 million, and it still only raises 4 billion, not 45.
Well, I would invite everybody who's interested in this issue to have a look at the paper on the Green Party website that sets this all out in detail.
Okay, well, you're not going to tell us this morning. So let me move on to another one, because you also want to extend the tax base. You want the highest rate of income tax to start at £100,000, not 150 as Labour proposes, but you also want it to be higher than 50%. How high?
Well, at the moment, we're working on our fully costed manifesto in which the figures all fit together.
Can you give us an idea of what you think the top rate should be?
No, I can't at the moment because we're working on those figures and we'll release them in time. But again, it's very clear that we really have to tackle the inequality in our society. We can't allow the 1%
I understand the argument. I'm trying to interrogate the policies, but you can't tell me on that either. But let me just go to the general principle. You think you will raise over 40 billion a year in wealth taxes. You want to take away more than 50% of everything that well-off people earn. How are you going to stop a mass exodus of the affluent from this country?
Well, I think it's worth thinking about the fact that the rich are people too. And we had various talk about when Labor raised the level of the top rate of tax, people going on television, celebrities saying they're going to leave the country. But actually, the rich,
well, they have France.
They have families.
They did in France.
They have children in school. They have friends. They have people. And what we need is a more balanced society, and we have to deal with this problem.
All right. Well, as the well-off rush for the doors, which I think is a likely, at least a possible scenario, you'd move to have almost no controls over anybody coming into the country, correct?
No, that's not true at all.
Well, can I just quote your policy statement? We will progressively reduce UK immigration controls.
And that's a statement in our policies for a sustainable society, talking about the medium term.
Okay. So that's your aim. Your aim is to remove border controls.
But what we want to do now is allow people who should have the right to be in the country to be in the country. And what we have to do is stop the race to the bottom on immigration rhetoric that we've been hearing, led by UKIP and sadly followed by the other countries. And people who should have a right to be in here, which means asylum seekers and refugees, we're not treating them properly and we need to. British people who want to live with their foreign non-EU spouse or partner here, on the government's own figures, 19,000 Britons can't live in their own country. We saw last year the number of foreign students applying to British universities going down.
But that's
all of those are things that are causing real damage to people's lives.
And your policy document says richer regions do not have the right to use migration controls. That is open doors. That's what you want. That's your party's policy.
What we're talking about is, and I'd invite people to look at this. If you
I've got it. It's G203 in your policy statement. Richer regions do not have the right to use migration controls. That means open doors.
And if I'd invite people to Google Green Party policy and look at this, and you'll see what we're talking about. As all of Green Party policy democratically made by its members does, it says that we're looking both in the immediate term, and that will be the policies in our manifesto, the kind of policies about immigration I was just talking about, and in the longer term, thinking about 20, 30 years hence, we're talking about a different kind of society, a society in which the world is more equal, where we're more balanced.
All right. Now, you want pretty much the free movement of people, but you don't like free trade, do you? You want import controls, and you would even want import controls and stuff coming from the EU. Well, you know that's not compatible with EU membership, don't you?
Again, we're talking about long-term changes. At the moment, what we're doing very much is working on opposing the proposed EU-US free trade deal known as TTIP.
But you also want to,
it says here, you want
EC 904, you want to reduce to a minimum the overall volume of international trade. You want import controls.
We want to relocalise our economy, as indeed people may recall in 2010 when this government was elected. They were talking about rebalancing our economy, bringing manufacturing back to Britain, and that's very much what we want to do. We want to build strong local economies in Britain.
You couldn't have import controls and stay in the EU, could you?
Again, we're talking about a long-term, a very much changed world. What we're talking about now, and it's actually, since we're on the EU, it's useful to say, perhaps if people don't know, that we have 3 yeses on the EU. We're saying yes to a referendum because we believe in democracy. Possibly not all of your listeners do. We believe in democracy. We believe in people's right to choose.
And you want to stay in.
And we'll campaign to stay in. But we want a very much reformed EU that works for communities and is much less centralised.
I want to move on to defence. We haven't got much time. Now, you really don't believe in the defence of the realm, do you? You'd scrap Trident, you'd leave NATO, and your party policy also says a large standing army, air force or navy of the type we have now is all unnecessary, correct?
That's right. Trident, we talk
Trident
about...
you go, I understand that. NATO you would leave, but you also don't think we should have much of an army, air force or navy?
Well, I think we obviously need to be able to defend our own borders, civil defence, and we have a real responsibility as a rich country to contribute to UN peacekeeping forces.
So we have a home defence force?
Yes.
How big?
The circumstances at the time, Andrew, when you're thinking about when the Green government takes office, I'll be able to spell out picture and verse on that.
These are policies you may hold other parties to account on if you're in the balance of power. How would you arm that defence force, this home defence force of unspecified sense, since it's also party policy to convert the arms industry into producing windmills?
I'm not sure that's exactly spelt out that way, but certainly we have a huge policy.
Renewable energy resources use the same skills and resources as the existing arms industry, and you've talked about how you could turn defence capabilities into producing windmills yourself. So how would you arm our home defence system?
Well, I think there's no shortage of arms in the world, and that's something that is a huge issue.
So you would import them?
Well, I don't think we've got any shortage of supply anytime soon in terms of...
You know that arms get very quickly out of date. How could you arm our soldiers, troops, in the event of a serious threat if you've abolished the arms industry and you're against importing?
Well, we have an arms industry at the moment that's heavily export focused, and one of the issues that's coming up at the moment, at the moment we're focusing on our relationships with Saudi Arabia.
How would you arm it if you've abolished the arms industry? How would you, and you're against trade? How would you arm our home defence force?
Well, I think a lot of people at the moment think a bigger issue is our relationship with Saudi Arabia and the way in which we are arming Saudi.
Is that because you can't answer my question?
No, it's because I want to raise a very important issue that's current in the moment today, which is Saudi Arabia.
All right, but I'm afraid I understand on Saudi Arabia, but I haven't got time to talk that, because what I want to ask you is this, and it's relevant to Saudi Arabia, given their role in the world and what they've done with terrorism. As you scrap out defences, or certainly pare them right back, you would make it legal for people living here to be a member of Al-Qaeda, or ISIS, or the IRA. You'd make it legal to be a member of a terrorist organisation.
This is a part of our policy that I think dates back to the age of the ANC and apartheid South Africa.
It's on your website at the moment. It should not be a crime, PD 443 in your website, to belong to an organisation or have sympathy with its aims, though it should be a crime to aid and abet criminal acts, but it shouldn't be a crime to be a member of Al-Qaeda or ISIS.
And
correct?
Exactly. What we want to do is make sure we're not punishing people for what they think or what they believe. Obviously, actions of inciting violence, supporting violence, those are absolutely unacceptable, illegal, and should be pursued to the full extent of the law. But we have to be really, when we're thinking about issues around security and issues around like internet privacy, etc., we need to really think about an important principle here.
I'm not asking about internet privacy. I'm asking you a position where you're going to run down our arms, our ability to defend ourselves, but let anybody who wants to join Al-Qaeda.
What we're talking about is a principle that you shouldn't be punished for what you think, and we need to balance. We do not protect freedom by destroying it.
Can I just find, if there are debates, and if the Greens take part in one or two of them, will you do both, or will Caroline Lucas?
Their leader debates, those debates I'll be doing.
You'll do both?
But what we will...
But she said to me she might do one of them.
Well, I think she said on Radio 4 yesterday that their leader debates,
and I'd be doing those. Because she told me on Thursday night on BBC One she might do one.
But there are many other... the Green Party, we're not a one-woman or one-man...
But you do both.
We're not a one-woman or one-man party.
I very much understand that.
Other events
but
will be
both.
different people doing those things.
You do both?
Yes.
Okay, just one very quickly, you want to control the BBC schedules as well if you're in government, so that we broadcast educational programmes in prime time. Does the Sunday Politics count as an educational programme for prime time?
I think I'll leave the viewers to decide that for themselves.
Because if you'd said yes, you'd have had our vote. Natalie Bennett, thanks for being with us. A lot more we'll discuss with you as the campaign goes on.